Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Josephs, and I am a marketing specialist at OpenStax. And today I'm honored to be joined by David Handel, the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of iDoRecall, as well as Dr. Barbara Oakley, the Distinguished Professor of Engineering at Oakland University. Today, our presenters will be discussing the best learning practices for students based upon current cognitive science research and learning science research. Before we get started, we're just going to talk a bit about what OpenStax is, OpenStax's mission, and our relationship with iDoRecall. So most of you may already know what OpenStax is, but if you're new to OpenStax, there's a few key things you're going to want to know. OpenStax is part of Rice University, which is located in Houston, Texas. We are a nonprofit organization, and we're able to offer our vast array of free resources due to support from foundations, smaller donations from individuals, and mission support fees from our technology partners like iDoRecall. So anytime an instructor chooses to pair one of OpenStax's free textbooks with one of our technology partners, we get a small mission support feedback that helps sustain our nonprofit work. OpenStax is a mission-oriented organization, and our aim is ultimately to transform learning so that education works for every single student. One of our main areas of work is publishing our library of free, openly licensed, and peer-reviewed textbooks. These textbooks are available for free online in WebView and PDF formats. Since 2012, we have published a library of over 45 textbooks, thereby saving students over $1.7 billion in textbook costs in the process. You just heard me say that OpenStax offers openly licensed textbooks, but what exactly does that mean? We have a fantastic definition up here on the screen from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, which is a big supporter of OER. In essence, OER, or Open Educational Resources, are any educational materials that are publicly available, don't cost anything to use, and don't have any restrictions on them that limit how users can modify the content. As I mentioned before,
Lindsay, if I can just interject for a moment, it looks like the chat function isn't active.
Oh.
And there also is a question about whether we're going to share the slides. I know that David and I will be sharing, the slides that I'll be using. So yes.
Oh, no, thank you for bringing that up. So yes, OpenStax will be sharing these slides, and we'll be sure to send out the slides and the recording of the webinar after the webinar is finished. So you'll be able to access all of these resources afterwards. In addition, I will look into the chat function not being active, so that way our participants can submit their questions. All right, and going off of that, now I'm going to talk a little bit more about OpenStax textbooks. So as I discussed earlier, OpenStax offers free textbooks in the areas of math, the sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, business, and college success. All of our books are designed to meet the standard scope and sequence requirements of their respective courses and are written and reviewed by industry experts. Each of our books also goes through an extensive editorial process to ensure that the content is up to date, clear and concise, and is representative and reflective of diverse audiences. Lastly, each of our books receive regular editorial updates. We revise our books when it's pedagogically necessary. So if there's a major development in a field, we may publish a new edition of a textbook like we recently did with college physics. Or if there's a smaller update or smaller updates or changes need to be made, we will do that frequently in the online editions of our textbooks. Overall, our textbooks look a lot like other books that are on the market. However, unlike textbooks that aren't OER, OpenStax textbooks are 100% free and are available under an open license, so you can modify, rearrange, and customize the content as you see fit. Here at OpenStax, we offer much more than just textbooks. Each of our free books also comes with free instructor and student resources like LMS course shells and cartridges, lecture slides, and test banks. We also offer free webinars like this one and free articles on our blog on a variety of topics, like tips and tricks for using our resources, strategies for teaching, and more. Another helpful resource that we offer is our support center, which is a great resource to turn to if you have any questions about our resources. And we also offer OpenStax Tech Scout. We know that digital technology is essential for learning, especially in today's hybrid learning environment, and that finding the right learning technology for your course can be challenging and time consuming. So we've decided to streamline this process by offering a searchable tool on our website where you can look for courseware, online homework, labs, and more that align with each of our textbooks and that meet your specific course needs. iDoRecall is one of the learning technology tools that you can find through OpenStax Tech Scout. As part of our work to make education more affordable, we partner with learning technology organizations like iDoRecall that offer free or low cost and high value education technology resources. In the process, iDoRecall helps to enrich the OpenStax experience for instructors and students alike by helping to provide the financial support that we need to keep our books up to date and accessible for all. Now that I have taken the time to introduce OpenStax, I am going to hand it over to David Handel. Just give me one moment.
Good afternoon from South Jersey. I want to thank each of you for showing up today and being willing to invest your time to watch this webinar. Once again, I'm David Handel, MD, the CEO of iDoRecall. Before I proceed further with our introductions, I want to quickly let you know that after our featured presentation, I will be talking to you about the complete details of a special offer. iDoRecall has created comprehensive flashcard sets for most of the OpenStax titles. Your students, you and your school can use them for free. The unique benefit of these flashcards is that if your student struggles to recall the correct answer, there's a button on the back of the flashcard that will open a PDF of the textbook at the exact relevant location, making it easy for them to fully refresh their memory. Complete details about this are coming up later in the webinar. I will be presenting today along with Dr. Barbara Oakley. I'm a retired radiologist, and I want to take a few moments to share a bit about my backstory because I think that it's instructive about how learning how to learn changed the trajectory of my life and can massively change the future of your students' lives. When I was a child, no one would have guessed that I would grow up and become a physician trained at Duke University. In fact, throughout my K-12 years, I was a mediocre student. Regardless, I came from a family where you're expected to go to college, and so I went. But I ended up disappointing my parents when I dropped out after my freshman year with a C- average. I never was a lazy student, and I don't believe I had any learning disabilities. I just didn't know how to learn. Soon after I dropped out of college, I developed the novel aspiration to become the first under 21-year-old registered stockbroker. At age 19, while preparing for the licensure examinations, I discovered the most important tool for learning, and that tool is retrieval practice. Retrieval practice is like taking your brain to the gym to exercise your recall ability for specific memories. It's extraordinarily effective. Forgetting is a natural part of how our brain functions, but remembering what we learn is crucial to our success. After all, it's not really learning if you can't remember what you've learned. At age 22, I returned to college armed with retrieval practice at the core of my study regimen. I earned straight A's the rest of my undergraduate career. I was accepted into medical school, and ultimately I graduated #1 in my medical school class. I don't know where I would be today if I hadn't discovered the amazing powers of retrieval practice. Imagine if all of your struggling students could one day tell a story similar to mine. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Barbara Oakley. She'll be talking about the science of how we learn and the power of retrieval practice. We're very fortunate to have Barb with us. If you're unaware, she's probably the world's preeminent teacher about learning how to learn and how educators can leverage scientifically proven best practices in their teaching. She's created one of the most successful, massive open online courses, Learning How to Learn. No doubt many of you are familiar with it. Recently, Barb has created another series of MOOCs based on and extending the contents of her bestseller, Uncommon Sense Teaching. I urge everyone listening today to check out these fantastic free courses on Coursera. Barb is the Distinguished Professor of Engineering at Oakley University, and she's traveled the world giving keynotes on these topics. I could fill an entire webinar discussing Barb's achievements, but without further delay, let's listen to her presentation.
I guess I should come live. Thanks so much for that very nice introduction, David. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen. And we have so much to help give insight into the kinds of things that David has been talking about with relation to retrieval practice. So I do have to say that Steve Jobs, did you know that the final project he was just beginning work on before he died was to make textbooks available for free at low cost to students worldwide? So here this magnificent genius was embarking on exactly what OpenStax is finally bringing to fruition. So I could not be prouder than to share with some scientific insight about how effective learning, particularly through the kinds of techniques that David is talking about and can be implemented through OpenStax, can help so many students to become successful. So I should give you a little bit of a sense of my own background. I'm, to some extent, I'm like David. I was not a superstar student. In fact, I grew up moving all over the United States. So by the time I was about 15 years old, I'd lived in 10 different places. The thing about moving all the time is mathematics in particular is highly sequential. If you fall off anywhere along the way, it can be incredibly difficult to get back on. Well, when I was about 7 years old, I was moving from Lubbock, Texas to Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And as you might imagine, Massachusetts was very far ahead in the multiplication tables, which is what they were studying. My age group was studying at that time. So what happened? I just gave up. I said, I don't have the math gene. I wasn't really interested in math anyway. And I flunked my way through elementary, middle, and high school math and science, which really is ironic because I am addressing you here as a distinguished professor of engineering, and I am the real deal. I publish in top journals. I'm a fellow of top engineering organizations. So one day, one of my students asked me, how did you do it? You know, I mean, you were a loser at math. How'd you become an engineering professor? And I thought about it. And I was this little girl who, I loved animals. Actually, I love this picture of me because it is the last cute picture of me. But I liked knitting and weaving and all those kinds of things. And I knew I could never, ever grow up to do anything technical. So I thought, what could I do? I wanted to learn another language. Now, for many of you, that's a no-brainer. You speak second, third, fourth, whatever languages. But for me as a youngster, I just thought it seemed like a unique way to gain a different perspective on the world. But I couldn't afford to go to college. And I also couldn't, how could I learn another language? Well, there was one way I could learn another language and actually get paid to do it. And that was to join the army. So you see me here looking really nervous, about to throw a grenade. And if you knew how clumsy I actually am, you would know why I look so nervous. But I did learn another language. I learned Russian. I wish I had learned Ukrainian, but I ended up working out on Soviet trawlers up on the Bering Sea. And I just loved having new perspectives and seeing the world through different lenses. So I also ended up at the South Pole Station in Antarctica, which is where I met my husband. So I like to say I had to go to the end of the earth to meet that man. The thing was, I ended up, sorry, this is how you tell that something is live. I ended up going, well, when I was going to get out of the service, I couldn't get a job, not a job, good job offer that I was looking for. In fact, no one was really interested in hiring a person whose sole professional expertise was Slavic languages and literature. So I'd done everything people had told me to do. I'd followed my passion, but I hadn't thought to broaden my passion. And that is what you as educators are doing, is helping students not just to follow their passions, but to broaden their passions in whatever they're learning. So what this means is that learning itself is really important. For me, what I did was age 26, I went back to the university, started with remedial, lowest possible high school math, slowly began working my way upwards. But what I found was something interesting. The processes that I had learned involving retrieval practice to learn a language, when I applied them to learning in math and science, I was a star. It helped me to be successful. So it wasn't that I was some genius as a kid growing up. It's that I stumbled across some techniques that have been now shown by science to be tremendously effective for helping learners of all kinds. And what are these techniques? How does the brain really learn? As it turns out, we have around 86 billion building blocks called neurons in our brains. These are the fundamental cells. And to understand these cells, I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, this is the super dry and boring scientific part of whatever she's going to present. So let's just spice it up a little bit with an analogy for a neuron. And our analogy or metaphor is a space alien. Space aliens have legs, just like neurons have dendrites. And they've got these little toes on their legs, which are they're similar to what are called dendritic spines on neurons. And then neurons have these arms that reach up. Those are called axons. And so what neurons do, in essence, is they like to reach out and tickle the toes of an adjoining neuron. What is really happening is they are sending out signals that travel along mostly electrically, then they jump that gap called the synapse, and they do that with neurochemicals or neurotransmitters, and then the signal moves along to the next neuron. What is happening when you learn something is those connections are strengthening as you practice. So ultimately, what is happening is you have these nice strands of connected neurons as you are learning, and as you practice, they become stronger. Those connections become much easier to draw to mind. So we have several questions we would like to ask you. Well, what I'd like you to do is think back to when you were a student. I'm going to give you 4 different techniques. And what I want to ask you is, which one of these techniques did you use most often when you were trying to learn? Was it rereading the course textbooks, highlighting or underlining, practicing maybe with flashcards, or was it creating a concept map? So, Lindsay, if you might want to go ahead, well, let's see what. Let's see. We should have this. You should have a poll here, and go ahead and vote. And Lindsay will let us know the results as soon as we've got them. How are we doing, Lindsay?
We're good at about 75% participation, so we can end the poll whenever you think would be best.
I think let's give them 5 seconds.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll if that's good with you, Barbara.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see. Okay, can we see the poll? Here it is. Okay, I shall share it. So rereading, that was a popular one for me. Highlighting and underlining, flashcards, creating concept maps. Very few create concept maps. So the winner here is, well, it's rereading tied with flashcards. Yeah, but coming up strong behind is highlighting and underlining. So let's see, that was really fascinating. Let's see if I can get a screenshot because that's like so cool. Of course, I screenshot. Okay, so let's move on to the next one right here. And our next question for you, it's pretty much the same sort of thing, but what I want you to do is vote on which one do you think is the most powerful technique to help you learn most effectively. So not like what did you do, but what do you think is the one that really is most helpful? So truly and effectively most helpful. So go for it. The poll has been launched. The clock is ticking, so to speak. Let's see. I see someone there has a question about Srpski language. One thing I recommend, there's for Slavic language and any kind of language help, there's a Skype add-on called iTalki, and you can go on iTalki and request pretty much, you can find speakers of just not only just about any language, but specific speakers within that language. Like my son-in-law is from Chile, and so I want to learn Chilean Spanish, which is kind of like learning English with a thick Scottish brogue. But they have Chilean Spanish speakers. So check out iTalki. That might be helpful for you. And how are we doing? We got everybody?
Yeah, we're at 87% participation, so I think we can end the poll and share the results.
Okay, I'm so excited to see. Okay, oh, look at this. And we have success because more people have figured out that retrieval practice really is a very, very helpful technique. What surprises me, I can go and ask students, I can ask professors all around the world, and you guys are really pretty clued in to what is important. But most places I go to, they'll say concept map is the most important. Here's the deal with concept maps. Everybody thought concept maps was really going to be the most helpful way to help you learn, much better than retrieval practice. But nobody ever actually studied it until around 2012, 2011, when Jeff Karpicki, Roediger, and others published findings showing that retrieval practice is like so far ahead of concept mapping in not only its ability to help you remember things, but its ability to help you understand things, that's where the magic comes in. I mean, think about it. If you're trying to think and understand a concept, what are you really trying to do? You're trying to retrieve it, get it in mind so you can get a better understanding. If you can't retrieve it, you can't build that conceptual understanding. So in any case, let's take a quick look here. Why is this that retrieval practice is so beneficial? It's like this. When you first are introduced to something, you get an initial idea that lays subtle, weak sets of neural connections, weak links within your long-term memory and the neocortex. But each time you retrieve, you call that idea to mind, you strengthen those links, you also connect them with other things, helps with transference and so forth. In fact, retrieval practice has been shown to be it's probably the best technique we know of to help students learn. You might think, no, teaching is the best technique. Well, what do you do when you teach? You retrieve. What do you do when you have students talking with one another? You're encouraging them to retrieve. In fact, most techniques and approaches that we think are most beneficial for helping students learn involve retrieval practice. And again, there's dozens and actually hundreds and hundreds of papers that show that retrieval practice is profoundly beneficial. If you look, let's look at online courses, because I'm just putting together the final MOOC for the Uncommon Sense Teaching Specialization. If you look at a discussion forum online versus encouraging students to do retrieval practice online, which one's most effective? By far, encouragement of retrieval practice. When they have textbooks, when they're using those textbooks, it's retrieval practice that does the magic. And why? Here's another way to look at why retrieval practice is so profoundly effective. You read something in a book, you think you got it, you put the book away, and you don't look at it for a couple of weeks because you're really busy reading these other books. In the meantime, what has happened is that your little synaptic janitor has swept away those dendritic spines that are not being used because they're not being used. Retrieval practice gives a systematic way of retrieving that information consistently, just especially when you're at the point of about to forget it. So if you have a very good program that can analyze when you're about to forget and ask you to retrieve that information, that is going to be the best way to help with learning. We can see this even in light microscopy images of the brain. If you look at this is a image of a living dendrite, it's right after learning, but before sleep. And this is actually before learning and before sleep. And this is the same exact living neuron after learning and after sleep. And if you look here, look at these little blue triangles. There was no dendritic spine at all there before learning and before sleep. But after learning and after sleep, it started to make a connection. One thing I would like to encourage you to do, your students should do their studying during the day and so forth, not the last minute before they go to sleep, but right before they go to sleep. Those 2 or 3 minutes, encourage them to retrieve the key ideas or concepts they're trying to understand or remember. Because what that'll do is that will signal the brain that when it is practicing and sending electrical and neurotransmitter signals during the night, it should be practicing with those very ideas that you had just reminded your brain about as you were about to fall asleep. So that's a very good learning tip. And if they really have time, do it not only when they are about to fall asleep, 2 or 3 minutes, not gigantic learning sessions, but also when they wake up in the morning. And this brings me to something that is hand in hand with retrieval practice, and that is spaced repetition. So, in other words, how often should you retrieve? When should you retrieve? By spacing, let's say that you have 5 hours in a week to study something. You should space it out. So 1 hour per day, each day, for most days of the week. What this will do is that 1 hour here will help you to learn the information. But then when you go to sleep at night, it will strengthen that information during sleep. So learning, sleep, learning, sleep. So you're getting like twice the bang for the buck, as opposed to if you just crammed 5 hours in one day. What's the beauty of having, well, you can see what happens. You cram in everything in one day, much weaker set of links that are much easier to sweep away. What's beautiful about these flashcards is that you can have them and you can use them repeatedly at spare moments, and it works really, really, really well for helping students. I like to think of retrieval practice as something that is, it's like building a brick wall. It takes time to do. You lay a layer of bricks, mortar, and by the time you've given some time to it, you've got a nice, strong wall of learning. But without that time and that repetition of repeatedly retrieving the information, you've got a very, very weak wall of learning. So with that, I can say that retrieval practice has made an enormous difference in my own life. I was just speaking with a university I'm going to in the Middle East, and they were just saying, our problem with our students in medical school is they simply do not know how to learn effectively. It's not just there. It's almost everywhere, all over the earth. So by using these kinds of, and encouraging these kinds of retrieval techniques in your classes with your books, you're actually helping your students not only in your class, but to be successful in everything they do. So I really cannot thank David enough for the wonderful work he has done with iDoRecall. It's the best flashcard system that I am aware of. I use it myself, and I cannot give enough thanks to OpenStax for doing something that is going to make a tremendous difference in how education worldwide unfolds.
Thank you, Barb, for that outstanding presentation. It may be very surprising to a lot of folks that retrieval practice and spaced repetition eclipse all other strategies for building robust recall of the things we learn. Now I'd like to tell our audience a bit about iDoRecall and our special offering for OpenStax textbook users. iDoRecall is a unique flashcard app. But first, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. iDoRecall's flashcards are called recalls, so whenever I say the word recalls, you should think flashcards. Recalls can be linked to the sources of your learning. These links close a very important loop in the continuum of learning and forgetting. Allow me to help crystallize in your minds how this linking works. Imagine that you've learned something while reading a file, such as a Word document, a PowerPoint, or a PDF. With iDoRecall, as you read and learn, you create flashcards, perhaps even creating flashcards instead of taking notes. If you comprehend something new and you want to ensure that you'll remember what you just learned, pause and create a flashcard. Then when you practice memory retrieval with your flashcards, if you struggle to recall the answer, you can click the source button on the back of the flashcard, and that source file or video will open at the linked location where you learned that concept, fact, definition, or formula. Flashcards are fantastic for exercising your brain and practicing memory retrieval. Their superpower is in giving you immediate feedback when you turn the card over to see the answer. But there is no better way to cure your forgetting than having instant access to the exact location and context where you learn that nugget of knowledge so that you can refresh and restore your memory. Our recalls are spaced repetition flashcards. Learners rate how well they recall each answer, and the iDoRecall spaced repetition algorithm uses that rating, along with other data, to schedule when the student will be shown that recall again. This self-rating is an exercise in reflection and metacognition that engages the student in assessing how well they're doing in integrating their learning into their existing network of knowledge. Every new thing we learn must become connected to some pre-existing knowledge. Spaced repetition refers to spacing out the retrieval practices over time. This is a thoroughly proven technique for enhancing memory. If you practice a flashcard and challenge your recall ability when you're getting close to forgetting that piece of knowledge, that struggle to remember is a desirable difficulty and is far more valuable than seeing a flashcard again and again when you already know it cold. Spacing also enables you to maintain the recallability of a much larger collection of learnings, since you're only practicing memory retrieval of a small subset of your knowledge base each day. Besides linking recalls to files that you upload into your library, iDoRecall enables you to create recalls while you're watching videos on YouTube, Coursera, and other online platforms. You can also link recalls to specific words and regions of interest on web pages. When you practice memory retrieval with these recalls, if you need to refresh your memory, in one click, the video will open at the relevant time location, or if the source is a web page, it will open and scroll to the correct location on that page. iDoRecall also has a feature that we call groups. Groups are very relevant to the study of what we've created for Openstacks' amazing portfolio of textbooks. You can think of a group as a digital space for students to create a virtual study group with classmates, or for an educator just like you to create a class in the app. A group has its own collection of recalls, and it could have its own library of files and videos. The group creator can set the privileges that members have, such as whether they're permitted to collaborate and submit recalls and library files to the group. All group members can clone the group's recalls, files, and videos for use in their own iDoRecall accounts, and then use that content to learn, and most importantly, use it to remember what they've learned. So to recap, if you'll allow me a bit of spaced repetition, you can use iDoRecall to create flashcards while consuming your learning materials you've uploaded into your account's library, or while you read almost any web page or you watch online videos. As you consume the content, you could take notes, but we encourage you to make flashcards. Then use those flashcards to practice memory retrieval so that you can develop robust recallability of your learnings. When you practice a recall, reflect on how well you remembered the correct answer, and if needed, easily refresh your memory in the exact context where you learned it. Remember that you can also create or join groups where you can gang tackle a subject or topic, share recalls, share learning files, and learn together. Now, I'd like to explain what iDoRecall has developed to complement the Openstacks portfolio of textbooks. We hired a team of educators who are subject matter experts for the various Openstacks textbooks. Each educator was tasked with creating a comprehensive set of recalls linked to a specific Openstacks textbook. Some textbooks are supported by as many as 2,400 recalls, although most of the OpenStax textbook sets are in the range of 250 to 600 recalls. Each of these sets of recalls is available for free to anyone. This means that any student, regardless of their means, can create a free iDoRecall account and then access any of the OpenStax flashcard sets that they need. These sets of flashcards are contained within the recalls list of individual iDoRecall groups, the kind of groups that I just described a minute ago, with each group devoted to a single textbook. Let me show you how you and your students can get a hold of this content. Even if you don't already have an iDoRecall account, go to iDoRecall.com, click OER Content. From there, click to view our collection of nearly 40 titles that we support. Select a title that you're interested in, and then click the Master This Textbook for Free button. You will be taken through the registration process for your new account. After you receive the confirmation email, click the link. Your account will open a new browser tab on the page where you can then confirm that you want to join the group. After you join, you'll find yourself on the group's About page. Here you'll see a share link that you can send to anyone who you want to invite into the group. You can require that students who use the share link to join your group must wait until you approve their entry. You can also later remove a member if you need to, or elevate their status to that of a moderator so that they can assist you in managing the group. You can set permissions that allow members to contribute recalls and to contribute learning materials, but all submissions still must wait for your approval before they are published for all members to see. If you join a group that you didn't create, if the permissions are so set, you can clone that group. Cloning creates your own copy of the group with all of its content and none of its members. If you're teaching a course, cloning is the easiest way to create your own private version of an OpenStax public group. Then you can exclusively invite your own students to join. If you have an educator's license, you'll be able to monitor the metrics and activity of your students as they use the content in any groups that you've either created or cloned. Incidentally, if you're an educator listening to this webinar, write to me at david@idorecall.com, and I'll be happy to set you up with a free educator subscription. Please write to me from your school email and include a link to a page on your school's website that identifies you as a staff member. Now let's look at the group's recalls list. Here you can click a recall to examine its details. You can even click to see the linked source. Group members can clone recalls for use in their personal accounts. When you clone a recall that is linked to a source, that source link will open the relevant file even if you don't have that file or video in your library. It's easy to clone recalls in bulk by selecting the ones that you want, or you can click here to obtain all of the recalls in the group. Once the recalls have been cloned into your account, you can start practicing them the same as recalls that you may have created on your own. Once you practice them, they become scheduled for the next practice by the iDoRecall spaced repetition algorithm. In review, there are two ways to take advantage of the iDoRecall OpenStax sets of flashcards. You can tell your students to go to iDoRecall.com/subjects and then find the set that supports the OpenStax textbook that you use for your class. They should click the Master This Textbook for Free button. Or you can join the OpenStax group yourself and then clone the group to create a private version containing all of the content. Invite your students to join your private version of the group. The advantage of cloning one of our groups and setting up your own is that you'll be able to directly control and tailor its content. Just like the OpenStax mission of enabling educators to revise and remix their textbooks, you can do the same with our OpenStax companion content. Within your cloned copy of the group, you can delete recalls, edit them, and add your own recalls, even linking your recall to the relevant locations in the textbook or any other content that you wish. You can also add your own content, such as PowerPoints and PDF handouts, to your group's library for students to clone into their own accounts and use. You can optionally choose to enable your students to collaborate and contribute recalls and content to the group. This is a wonderful way to engage your students in the course materials. You'll be able to approve or reject content submissions and maintain group content quality. You're always in control of the group's content and members. I hope that you'll take advantage of iDoRecall. If you don't want to create your own clone of one of our OpenStax groups, please consider telling your students about the OpenStax companion content for your course so that they can take advantage of our flashcard sets. The content and the capabilities I've just presented are free for you, they're free for your students, and they're free for your school. Thanks again for investing your time to listen to this webinar, and thanks again to Dr. Oakley for educating us on the importance of retrieval practice and spaced repetition.
Thank you, David and Barbara, for those wonderful presentations. And we've got like 13 minutes left, so we can now head into the Q&A portion. So David and Barbara, if you click on Q&A, you should be able to see a bunch of different questions that have been asked.
Okay, pardon me.
Wow.
The last one I'm seeing is, are the flashcards separated by chapter? And in some cases they are. In some cases, the subject matter expert added a tag to each flashcard based on what chapter it's in, but it's not universal. And I wish it had been, but you're able to access the flashcards in the order in which they were created. So the ones at the beginning of the book will be the oldest flashcards, and we've sort of set it up that way so that you can download all the flashcards from the group to your own account, and then you can start practicing them based on the date they were created. And until you practice a flashcard for the first time, it's not going to be scheduled for practice except for the first 50 from the group. I hope that's not confusing, but we didn't want to overwhelm people where you'd have to practice like 1,000 flashcards the next day. So the first 50 get put, if you clone all the flashcards from the group into your own account, the first 50 will be scheduled for tomorrow. The rest will be put aside in a way that we explain in a video that tells students how to do this. And they'll be able to take those ones that they haven't practiced, and once they practice them the first time, then they'll go into the practice schedule after that. So oldest flashcards based on creation date. It's a sorting technique that we offer when you're looking at your list of flashcards. Okay, is it possible to check the textbooks in OpenStax? Yes, we actually don't provide the textbook itself in any of these groups. We encourage you to download them from OpenStax, or you can view them online. But we have a link to a PDF of the book, and that's what opens when you click to refresh your memory, and it opens to the location where that point that the flashcard is making is taught. Do students need to pay for sets of flashcards that you create as an instructor? Potentially. The proviso is that the students are using a free account of iDoRecall, and free accounts have a certain amount of capability before you would need a subscription. And one of those is you can create and use up to 200 flashcards, 200 recalls that are not OpenStax group related. For the OpenStax, it's totally unlimited. So a student who's in a school where maybe they're going to take 3 or 4 courses with OpenStax books, they could download thousands of flashcards, and they don't count against the 200 limit. If you create flashcards for your students, as long as they're only using up to 200 of them, then there's no issue with them needing a subscription. Let's see.
There's a really good question here. Why do I find retrieval practice almost painful? And I think the answer has come, or at least a clue as to the answer has come about only in a paper only published a few days ago. And what they've found is that when you are working harder mentally on something, there's a metabolite, GABA, that is exuded. And so portions of the brain that actually work harder have more of this metabolite there. And it may be that that's why you get tired when you're studying. They used to think it was you were depleting energy somehow, but it's not depletion of energy. It seems it's accumulation of metabolic side products as you're thinking hard. Retrieval practice is one of the kind of the ways you can think hardest. So I suspect it's that little GABA, that's accumulating. Why does it feel almost painful? Well, it is kind of a, byproduct that you have to get rid of. So maybe it's like drinking too much, but learning too much or something like that. I'm being a bit facetious here, but even Bob Bjork, the master of learning, points to the fact that, it's desirable to learn with more difficulty. So that increase in pain seems to go part and parcel with learning more effectively. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of like an athlete who's really working those muscles hard, and that's why they're being able to do better. And it's almost like that, I think, with learning sometimes. Using flashcards is able to hone you right in on what you need to be focusing on to learn and allows you to learn it.
Thank you for telling me about that GABA paper. I hadn't heard about that, and it explains a lot of my adult life. For years, I was practicing radiology, as I said, and I used to read 50 MRIs in a day. And when MRIs first came out, a whole study was maybe 100 or 200 images. And each one of them is an exercise in retrieval practice where you have to study it and then think about all the things that you know and how they apply to that image. Towards the end of my career, an MRI had thousands of images, and reading 50 of them a day, I used to come home from work and tell my wife, I'm totally fried. I think I've used up all my neurotransmitters. I can't talk tonight. I can't think. It's probably a ton of GABA.
There we go. It's the GABA effect there. So,
and desirable difficulties is definitely a part of it too. And you don't create a body of knowledge in your brain that you can go out and conquer the world with without putting effort into it. And the things that are the hardest to do are often the ones that are the most effective in the long run. And retrieval practice may be one of those things. As I said, as an analogy, it's like taking your brain to the gym and getting on a piece of equipment made just for that particular thing that you're trying to remember. And it's doing an exercise to build a mental muscle, basically.
Well, one thing that it's a little bit like, it's a bit sad in that educators, especially at lower levels, have been encouraging, that learning has to be fun. It always has to be fun. And then what happens is you'll have high school students get to college and suddenly, it's the math and science death march because calculus is not as fun as throwing eggs off of buildings. So we do a disservice for our students when we, kind of lead them to believe that all learning must be fun. And if it isn't fun for them, then that isn't their passion because it's like learning to play a musical instrument. It's not always fun. You have to play your scales, you have to practice. But if you did air guitar all the time, you'd never get the joy and beauty of being able to practice and play an instrument well. Or like riding a bicycle. When you're first learning to ride a bicycle, it's not fun. You fall off, you get scrapes. But it's after you get through those initial, that's when you begin flying on your bike and you love it. So what retrieval practice does is it helps you get through those initial harder stage of learning more quickly and more expeditiously. So and it certainly helped me with language learning. So, and I can still swear quite proficiently, but maybe I didn't get that from flashcards.
There's a question, can iDoRecall be used without using an OpenStax text? And the answer is yes. In every OpenStax, in every iDoRecall account, you get a personal library, and within it you can upload Word files, PowerPoints, PDFs, images. You can add YouTube videos to your library. You can add whole web pages where you put in the URL and we produce a PDF. And then you can consume that content within iDoRecall and create flashcards that'll be linked to where you link them to as you consume the content. The other thing is that we have a browser extension that enables you to read public-facing web pages and create highlights or screenshots of areas of interest that you can create a link recall right while you're on the website. And when you practice those recalls, if you need to click the source link, it'll open the web page and scroll to the location of that area of interest. And the browser extension also enables you to watch videos on YouTube, on Coursera, and on several other major platforms, and create recalls that are linked to the time codes in the videos. And then when you click the source link, that video will open in another browser tab at the location of the time where you link that recall. And lastly, if you read books in Kindle, you can link your Kindle highlights to a recall that'll open the Kindle desktop app on your computer to the right book at the location of that highlight if you need to refresh your memory. So there's lots of different things that you can link to besides the OpenStax books. And I guess that covers, is there an extension? Yes, you'll be able to download the extension from the Chrome Web Store, but also from within iDoRecall. In your profile, there's a section where you can see that. By the way, we have tons of demo videos on our YouTube channel. Just search for iDoRecall on YouTube and you'll see the link to the channel. It's also in some follow-up material that I'll give you all. And any educator, again, who wants a free educator license should just write me at david@idorecall.com. And I'll set you up with that and give you links to a lot of helpful material that'll help train you. There's a whole YouTube video about 10 minutes long that teaches educators how to use iDoRecall with their students. And I do encourage you to go make the extra effort to create your own clone of the group. And that way you can set it up as private, invite your own students, remix and redo any of the material in there that you want so that it's exactly what your students to see, because there may be flashcards for 2 semesters worth of material, for instance, in the biology book, of which there's, I think that's the one with like 2,400 recalls, or the anatomy and physiology, I think it's really like a 2-semester course. So you can adjust the material just the way you want, invite your students with the share link, and only you and them will be involved in that group. In the public-facing group, we also have a Facebook chat discussion group for the public group. If your students join that, they'll be able to talk with other students who are using those recalls and also with the author of the recalls. Okay, how do I find what would be another one to answer?
We're actually at the hour, unfortunately. So I will be sure to send all these questions to you, David and Barbara, so that way you can contact attendees afterwards with the answers to their questions. But before we end things, I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended today, and thank you to Barbara and David for an incredible presentation. I know that I learned a lot. I know that our audience members did as well. So we really appreciate your time and the incredible efforts that you've put into teaching students and to making education more accessible for students.
Thank you.
All right. And if that is all, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We will send out a recording and the slides via email following the webinar, so you'll be able to access whenever you need. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to attend, and I hope everyone has a great day. All right.